So Melissa, I actually emailed you saying I would be here attending.
Okay.
Even, 'cause, yeah, life changes direction sometimes, so.
It sure does. Especially
Oh,
Hey,
no,
just
mine are
hang-
way
hang on
over.
a second
My
while I-
youngest is 26.
Recording in progress.
It's all good. My father is 93, so it's so lucky this weekend. It's all-
If you guys see anybody else on the, that's trying to get into the meeting, let me know. And how many commissioners do we have? We have 1, 2, 3,
Or 5.
we have 5, so we do have quorum. Okay. I just lost my train of thought here. Summary. It's recording.
I can't hear you.
Ned, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay.
No
I
one's-
couldn't hear you, Melissa, for a second.
Yeah, no one's really talking right now, Ned, because
Okay.
I'm just working through some things.
Okay. I thought I saw your mouth movement, sorry.
She was talking to herself.
I was talking to myself.
Oh, okay.
The downside of the close-up.
Right. But now I know how to freak you out, Ned.
Danielle is waiting in the room.
So, Krista, is it your husband who started looking for Rob? Because they do new employees, they show up on the intranet every once in a while, and I saw Canadian, and it's like, there can't be that many.
So he's been, for like a month, he's been working as an inpatient social worker. And he's actually
Okay,
moving
I
to
think we can
therapy
get started.
outpatient. All right, we call the meeting to order. And we're gonna start with roll call. Chair Krista Cannon present. Vice Chair Ned Dorff.
Present.
Jenny Brinker.
Present.
Amy Cox.
She's excused.
Excused. Corey also excused. Corey Mim also excused. Julia Nordyke.
Present.
Mark Walter.
Present?
Alderperson Joey Presley. Not currently present, not excused either, right?
Correct.
We're expecting them? Okay. And Daniela Beal?
Present.
Thank you. Then moving on, do we have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
Do we-
second that.
Excellent. And do we have a motion to approve the minutes from last month?
We need to vote.
You need to vote.
All in favor of approving the agenda? Say
Aye.
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 Motion passed. Motion to approve the minutes from September 18th's meeting.
I'll move.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Then next up, we have a presentation from the Turn Energy Storage Project in Green Bay. And we'll turn it over to Melissa's screen, which she'll shortly be sharing. Do our presenters want to introduce themselves while she gets that transitioned?
Yeah, so if you could just unmute yourselves,
Here.
presenters.
All right, Mark, do you want to start off?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting us tonight. I'd like to introduce David Jakubiak and Scott McPherson, part of the Turn Energy Project team who work for Tenaska as consultants. Apologies for our senior director, Jared Pitts, for not being on the phone, but right now, as we speak, he's in a plane coming back from Michigan on another project. Thank you, perfect. But I'd like to introduce the project. Some of you may be familiar with it or not. Some of you may be familiar with battery storage or not. So we're trying to do like a 15-minute presentation, the three of us collectively, to fill you in on what we've been doing on North Quincy Street at the US Venture site, and how we believe it'll help harden and make more resilient the local and regional energy system. So again, my name is Mark Chrysos. I'm a project developer for Tenaska. My experience has been in renewable energies for the last 12 years. David Jakubiak is from Aileron, as Scott McPherson are. They are the community engagement folks and public relations firm that Tenaska has reached out to. We all work collectively, as I mentioned, directly for Jared Pitts at Tenaska. So I'll just kind of breeze through the agenda. If you could be so kind to go to the next slide.
Sure.
Yep. We're going to talk, I did kind of the introduction of who is Tenaska. That's important, I think, as we convey that. We're going to talk about what battery storage is and why the need is now. I'm going to give a few moments and a few slides about the technology itself, project overview, and of course, we'll leave time for questions. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, again, this is the team. Tenaska also has a team of engineers who are working with the project on us. And if you could be so kind to go to the overview about Tenaska. So Tenaska is headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. They have 35 years of energy experience, both in fossil and now the last 10 or 12 years in solar and wind, and the last 5 years on battery storage. And Tenaska is consistently ranked at Forbes magazine as the largest privately held companies in the United States. Very good record, always named one of the best managed companies. And the perspective of how many gigawatts Tenaska has manages 22 gigawatts. The project we're going to talk about tonight is, just to keep in frame of reference, 200 megawatts, which is 0.2 gigawatts. So this is a relatively, although a large project as a battery storage facility, it's a relatively smaller project in relationship to other types of energy technologies. And most importantly, Tenaska is always recognized as one of the safest companies, and recognized that to work with, which is important to us. Next slide, please. I'll turn it over to David now, talk about the need, why we believe battery and battery storage is needed currently.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I think any discussion about battery energy storage needs to begin with this map here. This was put out by the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, which is the organization that oversees electric reliability for the United States and Canada. And for anyone like myself who's down here outside of Chicago, I look at this and see right away the whole swath of the Great Lakes is looking at a challenging situation. This is for 2024 through 2028, and what they do is they look at the availability of electricity, what's going on in the electricity sector, and what does demand look like. And so let's go to the next slide. This is another image here that's not going to surprise anyone in this room. We are in the midst of a pretty remarkable and extraordinarily significant transformation of our electric grid in the United States. And here in the Midwest, which has long been the center of coal, we're seeing that perhaps more than anyone else, maybe outside of Texas. And what we can see here is the United States, which in 2020 was about 21% renewable resources, we're steamrolling towards 42% by 2050. A lot of that is going to be wind and solar, and one of the things that we all know about wind and solar is while they are extraordinarily predictable in terms of how much sun or wind are we going to get over the course of a year, they are intermittent sources. And so that's where battery storage comes in. When the wind is blowing overnight and there's not a lot of demand, batteries can absorb that energy and have it ready to go. Or when it's a bright sunny day and maybe folks are at work, so they're not using as much energy. The batteries can charge up then and be prepared to discharge that energy overnight. We can go to the next slide. This is really important right now because this is another thing that you guys in that room and online around the Green Bay area are going to be cognizant of as well, and that is we have a lot of advanced manufacturing, a lot of data centers going in, and these are very, very high intense energy uses. And so at the same time that we're moving to more intermittent resources, we are seeing for the first time in 20 years, if you look at this graph, you can see from about 2000 all the way up here to about 2025, we have flat or very incremental increases in demand. Well, the next 25 years are going to go off the chain. We're going to see demand unlike we've ever seen before in this country, and that is driven primarily by three different drivers. The first is data centers, the second is reshoring or onshoring of advanced manufacturing, and then the third one is electrification of massive sectors like transportation and home heating. Everything from our cars to ports are looking for ways to electrify, which is great for the environment, but also can really drive up electricity. So what this means is having dispatchable energy resources that can be provided by batteries is really, really important. And so let me kick it to the next slide here. We have been talking for about 5 years about how as we move to wind and solar, we're going to need to have batteries on the grid. Last winter, we had the first real life example of the value that batteries can offer. And this is when a cold front swept into Texas. And the funny thing happens in Texas when it gets really cold. Their infrastructure isn't built like ours here in the Midwest. They'll bury their gas lines really shallow and they can freeze up. They also run into situations where gas needs to be diverted to home heating so it can't power plants. And so what happens is their grid runs the risk of having blackouts and brownouts. We saw that a few years ago where it was catastrophic. There were kidney centers that couldn't run dialysis because they didn't have power and folks died, folks froze in their homes. This time around, due to a strong push to add batteries to the grid, about 1.2 gigawatts of batteries were able to be called upon right when the grid signaled that there were going to be some problems, and they were able to get the grid across those periods of high demand and back to a normal operating situation, so they didn't have the mass blackouts and brownouts. And so when we look at bringing this technology to the Midwest, we're looking to do the exact same thing, bring these dispatchable resources onto a grid to make it reliable, which is going to keep the power on, which is good for everybody from folks who want to keep their food safe to manufacturers who want to keep folks at work. And so that's why batteries and why now. Mark, I'll kick it back to you.
Okay, I think at this point, let's maybe suggest, is there any questions up to this point before I get into the technology and specifically the project and where it will be located in the footprint?
I was wondering, so why Green Bay?
So as Tenaska looks at locations to place battery storage, there are two or three key components. The most important component is what areas adjacent to substations that have capacity are available. So the GIS folks look around all over Wisconsin. We looked everywhere in Wisconsin. We found that Green Bay, specifically the Tower substation on North Quincy Street, had potential to accept our type of transmission load. In other words, 200 megawatts. There are many transformers in the United States, Midwest, everywhere, that have not had any kind of infrastructure upgrade for many years, meaning they're not suitable to add in, again, a load. The second thing we look for is sites that may be underutilized in an industrial area. And that we found at the site on North Quincy, which is you're all familiar most likely right on North Quincy with the US Venture site. That's a storage tank farm that had several acres of unutilized space available that we'll talk about at the presentation. So those two components, its location of where the substation is it the proper use? We always try to look at industrial parcels initially, and then we move on sometimes to agricultural if in fact the substation does not have anything close to it. So it's kind of a collection of items that would lead us to specific substations and then what's adjacent to that substation. Okay, so if you'd be kind enough to go to the next slide, the technology. So I guess it's important to show everyone what do we mean by battery storage. As David mentioned, battery storage does not generate electricity, it stores electricity during times of low demand and then discharges electricity during the day, let's say at 5 o'clock in the middle of the summer when it's very warm and everyone gets home from work or school, and they need that power for a short time, in other words, 2 to 3 hours. That's the purpose of battery storage. So it's to charge when power is available, and it discharges when power is needed, and it's a rapid response to the grid. It's instantaneous, like a battery in your flashlight. As soon as you press the button, 200 megawatts from that battery storage system would go on the grid to support Wisconsin Power's demand at that particular time, say 5 o'clock to 8 p.m. At the end of that 4-hour duration, that battery is spent. So it needs to be recharged, and usually recharging is at night because that's when the coal plants or the fossil plants are maybe running, or as David said, the wind is excess, and they will recharge overnight and be ready for the next day. It also connects via power lines and substation to the grid, and that substation, if you're familiar with the Tower substation, it's adjacent to the new water parcel across the street from US Venture, would be the accepting facility. And again, it does not generate power. What you're looking at are built-for-purpose containers that store batteries or modules of batteries. Those are the light white structures. They're about 8 by 10 by about 30, so they're 8 feet high, 10 feet wide, and about 20 or 30 feet long, and they store a series of battery modules that are in place. What you're looking at on the gray squares those are transformers, and what those do is they transform the electrical energy from a certain voltage, in this case 1,000 volts or more, to the proper voltage for the substation. And then if you see way in the back of the picture, that's the actual on-site substation that would convert, again, lower voltage power to match the voltage at the tower substation. So it's basically components. It's a very quiet operation in the sense that all the noise emanates is if you see the round things at the top, those are HVAC systems that heat and cool the batteries to a specific range of temperature. Next slide, please. And again, this is a different depiction, but it kind of gives you the idea where there's the battery enclosures, and the battery enclosures are run by what we call the battery management system that we'll talk about in another slide. The electrical cabinets, the power converters, the medium voltage transformers, and the controllers. These are all built for purpose systems. They're not 5-6 years ago, they were containers of sometimes refrigeration containers that batteries were in. These are non-inhabited. You cannot get in these. They're modules. They are not built for human occupancy. They're all controlled remotely, and they're very now well designed. That we'll talk about fire protection and safety in the next few slides. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, the key aspect of battery storage with Tenaska is safety. Safety is paramount to our projects. And what we have what's called the safety pyramid, and I'll go through that quickly, but first of all the modules, the containers, the equipment, the wiring has to meet very specific fire and safety codes. And if you're all familiar with the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, that's the nonprofit group that works collectively with industry, with fire protection experts, with the public to develop these standards. And these standards now specific to battery storage are codified in what's called NFPA 855. And that is the standard, the gold standard of how a battery storage system should be both designed, constructed, and built and monitored to assure that that system is performing safely and in compliance with the design criteria. That's a very important aspect that Tenaska has committed to. We're also using what's called the latest technological type battery, which is lithium iron phosphate. This battery has properties that far outweigh traditional lithium ion batteries in the sense that they have tendencies to, when they have an issue or an event, they will not prolong the event in the sense that you might have read older stories, you might have seen press where there's these older batteries that this is not the technology, this is new technology that we will be rolling out. They are self-contained, as I mentioned. They have protection features called the battery management system. The features would include things like monitoring for chemicals. They would include temperature inside the chambers. They would include any kind of overheating, etc. And then these systems would then remotely and automatically shut these systems down in an event there was an emergency. They're 24-hour monitored. They're safety tested for all the equipment. And then I think what's most important is the top three red triangles, and that is the controls that control the system, then the preparation for if there is an emergency, and then actually the emergency response plan. We work collectively with the fire departments. In fact, we've already had our initial training and introductory session with the City of Green Bay Fire Department, with the battalion chiefs and the fire marshal, to walk him through all these features and to offer our help as we design these systems. And the emergency response plan is designed by the jurisdiction. So Green Bay would design the emergency response plan with our assistance, with our experts, both internal to Tenaska and also our engineering support that have been doing this across the country prior to any kind of construction or development activities. So it's a pyramid of safety, I call it, that enhances both from the very beginning of the selection of the technology all the way up to the final response plan. And then, of course, training and best practices. Our commitment per the NFPA 855 is we would train the fire department and we would make sure that they have the necessary equipment that's needed to respond to an event. Next slide, please. And then...
Mark, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
There's just one little piece that I wanted to add on that last slide, and that is that part of NFPA 855 is a requirement that you produce a site-specific, technology-specific hazard mitigation analysis, and is that analysis that is used to design the emergency response plan. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, it's a very specific to the site and very specific to the technology. So everybody knows that what we're talking about, where we're talking about, and so that you design the project to, for example, ensure that you have turn radius for the vehicles that will be responding to that specific project site. All right, so I just wanted to add that.
Oh, that's good, thank you, Dave. So let's talk specifically about the project. So we have been working over the past 2 or 3 years with US Venture to utilize approximately 8 acres. As you see there, it's called the project location, that has been underutilized for many, many years. That's a tank farm area that we found would be suitable for our particular project. So we have an agreement in place, a real estate option to purchase once we get all the permits and we have the go to proceed for around the 8 acres. And as I mentioned, I think you're all familiar with North Quincy Street. It's in industrial zoned. It is about, again, 8 acres. This is 200 megawatts. And as I mentioned, it's for a certain duration, so it would be 200 megawatts for 4 hours. So it's 800 megawatts of potential energy. The utility, we would enter the utility, you see the green line moving in and across. That's called the GenTie, or the transmission line route. It's going to go through, it'll go across the remaining US property. It'll go over the road on North Quincy, and then it'll stay on ATC site. And then because of the infrastructure interference at the beginning of that site, on the front side of that site, we have been working with New Water to acquire an easement that would allow us to swing around and enter the ATC substation at the location that is preferred and required due to their spacing. That substation is constrained by a lot of local issues, but ATC, working with us, suggested the best route would be as depicted in green. And this would be overhead lines. This would be overhead lines, similar to the lines that you see directly below that are owned currently by ATC, right? The high tension lines that go into the substation from the south. So we've done a lot of work with US Venture, and we have last week submitted our conditional use permit through John Leroy and the City of Green Bay Planning Department, and we expect to be in front of the Plan Commission on November 4th to provide similar information as needed so they can review and hopefully approve a conditional use permit. And then, of course, it'll go to the City Council for final approval. So we've worked a long time, several years, with US Venture as the owner of the site. And John has been exceptional working with John at the planning board, giving us advice and guidance and direction. And we're very hopeful that it'll be a favorable meeting on November 4th, which is, I think, 2 weeks from Monday. So, next slide, please. And a kind of the timeline, again, as you all see, that the permitting has actually started. We're a little bit ahead of local permitting, which is a good thing. The challenge is always the interconnection, working with ATC and Wisconsin Power to gain that approval to actually have approval to enter the substation. And once construction starts, it's actually pretty quick. It's about a 1-year turnaround. And the project would be energized hopefully in 2026, 2027. We expect the offtake would be Wisconsin Power or some other entity that, as David said, has a specific need to supplement their system during certain times. So we're very optimistic that Wisconsin is coming around, as other Midwest states, with their planning for future growth and also future production by way of renewables, and this would be a key component of it. Next slide, please. I guess time for questions. Apologies if we spun through it, but we understand you guys have a pretty big agenda, so we just thought we would kind of give you a kind of 10,000 foot overview now, and, but we're very excited about the project. We've great cooperation with the site owners, US Ventures. John at planning has been, Scott and I have worked with John for 2 years now. He's given us great guidance on how to get things done, how to move through the process. And like I said, we're optimistic that on November 4th, we can answer any and all questions to the Plan Commission and gain that favorable outcome as it goes to City Council for final approval.
Thanks, Mark. Looks like we have some questions. Julia, go ahead.
Yeah. Sure.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you so much for the presentation. I literally knew nothing about batteries until you just presented, so I am very curious to know what are the potential benefits and what are the potential negative impacts for having something like this located in your community?
Sure. So Julia, the first benefit is that we're utilizing an underutilized space. In other words, that facility has been around, as you guys all know better than I, for a long, long time. They have plans, I don't know what their final plans are, but I think that facility is they used to use it as a pipeline reception facility and then fill the tanks, etc. That 8 acres have been around for a long time. That's very much underutilized. So the first benefit we see is that we would then utilize it for a purpose in an industrial setting. So it's not like we're, in a field, although we have projects in fields, so I don't want to discount that. The second thing, from a local perspective, it basically hardens or makes more resilient the local infrastructure of that specific utility. So again, electrons move around where they want, but as David said, with data centers or things like that, as Green Bay increases its industrial capacity, this substation would be able to accept this 200 megawatts for 4 hours. And then the third thing is the benefit to the city of Green Bay by way of taxes. Now, we can't talk specifically about taxes yet because in the legislature, there's some activity going on called utility payments. We're not sure how that's going to turn out, but the commitment from Tenaska is that there would be an agreement, a development agreement with the city of Green Bay that would outline specific payments in lieu of taxes or not. So the town would benefit by, one, an underutilized parcel getting utilized. Two, it's hardening the system, meaning there's more electricity available local. And then finally, as you deserve, you would be getting a tax payment every year, whether it's in this utility payment system or not. You would be getting benefit by that facility. And by the way, I should mention, this facility will be in the range of between $200 and $300 million to build. So this is not a little solar farm with 10 panels. This is a very substantial project. It also, Julia, brings in highly trained electricians to build it, and then there'll be some ancillary services related to that would be sourced locally. During construction, you're probably going to have 50 or 100 people for a year, and these are high-paying electrical scale people. And then as it pares down, you'd have a few technicians who would service the facility. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry, I know there's more questions, just one more.
We're up there.
Yeah, sorry, but just a follow-up. So you mentioned resilience, which I think is really important. The location, have you thought about the fact that we can have very high lake levels and storm surge, and it is potentially in a location that would be flooded, and I don't know if you've thought about the resilience of that in terms of the site, and making sure it's protected or level, like raised enough, or what the implications are of it if there was like massive flooding there.
That's a good point, Julia. That site, up until 2 years ago, was in the actual floodplain, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers floodplain. The analysis that was completed has taken it out of the floodplain. However, our insurance companies would never let us get away with putting anything even close to that. So the facility will be designed at an elevation that would keep us out of that storm surge floodplain.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, there's the regulated floodplain, but there's definitely risk to go above that potentially too. So I'm like, that's not like just the regulated insurance floodplain.
Sure,
So
sure.
it is a risky area, whether it's mapped or not by FEMA.
Understood, that's a good point, yep. And again, as I mentioned, these projects, when they go for financing, those questions are all, the engineering firm would design all that in anticipation of those questions, Julia. Yep. Thank you, I'll make a note of that too.
Before we move on to the next question, the second half of Julia's question was about risks in that area. I know she kind of pointed out flooding risk. Can you speak to any other local community risk?
So we're fortunate that we're located in the industrial area. Our neighbors are US Venture, New Water Sewage Treatment System, I believe Georgia Pacific, and the lumber, Scott, help me out here, the lumber,
McDonald, yeah.
McDonald Lumber and Associated Industries. So we're in a very area that it's very favorable to place a facility because we're in an industrial area. So the risks to quote unquote the general public is greatly reduced because we don't have local abutters or neighbors in the general vicinity of that site. And that has been in that street, North Quincy, has been industrialized for probably 100 years now. You know, so it's not like people are going to move in there with homes that we need to make sure that we protect.
So I understand how you're mitigating the risk. What are some of the risks?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, louder.
So you spoke to how you're mitigating the risks, but by placing it in an industrial area, what are the risks that you're mitigating?
So as David mentioned, the biggest risk to battery storage is the risk of fire. And as I mentioned, these advanced systems now that are in place, okay, have systems, the EMS, the battery storage system, have systems in place to minimize the threat of fire. However, if a fire should occur, they are also designed to respond to the fire in a way that would minimize any kind of off gas. But most importantly, as David mentioned, all our sites, as required by NFPA 855, require a hazard mitigation analysis. So what does that mean? That means that from a module level and then from a container level, we would collect information as if that burned, and then we would model that information as an off-site consequence. So we have data from recent issues in California and also some of our other sites that indicate that the risk off-site on this situation during an emergency would be minimal. And again, that risk in this area would greatly be reduced because there's really no one in the area working there. I mean, there's the workers, right? But we're not talking about residential neighborhoods. So this combination of the design and then the hazard mitigation analysis results, as David mentioned, combined with the fire department's response, and that's what the HMA does. It provides a base work for their emergency response plan. We feel very comfortable that the risk would be minimal.
Mark, I just think it would make sense, and I think the committee would find it helpful. It is not our project, but there was a project in California that in September had an incident, and it was one of the first times that due to their emergency response plan, they were able to get folks out almost immediately to do real-time air quality testing. And secondly, and particularly important for this site, real-time water quality testing. And when they sent that information to the lab, they were able to determine that at no time did the fire exceed health standards for any of the measured off gases. And I think what's really important to underline there is when you talk about toxics that are going to be associated with a battery energy storage fire, the toxicity is actually coming from the plastics and the foams that are in the system. And so it's going to be pretty similar to a structural fire. So you absolutely want to have that hazard analysis, that plume analysis done to know if there ever is an incident, who needs to know about it, how do you get that word out to let those folks know. But I will make sure, Scott, that you can send this over to the folks, the Spendito analysis. And for the water report, the way water is used on a battery storage fire in 2024 is you're using it to cool adjacent structures. The batteries are designed so that a fire does not leak from one container to another. And so you're using water to cool the adjacent structures. So it kind of runs over the structures, then onto the ground, and then would run off site. And that water did not exceed what they were finding in tap water. So that's also a really, really important thing for folks to know, is that we do not anticipate that there would be any threat to Lake Michigan from this project.
Thank you. Ned, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of things that you mentioned touched on what I was going to ask about. With the flooding risk and with the freezing and thawing that we go through all the time, I was curious about leaking of chemicals from the batteries. Who is going to monitor water quality in that area, and how often would it be monitored?
Ned, so by way of chemicals, the only chemicals that are in the battery storage system are associated with the transformers, right? And the transformer oil is a vegetable oil called EnviroTemp 50. That is a technology that has been used very recently, last 10 years. So it's a vegetable oil. So if there was an occurrence of a spill or something, it's non-toxic. It's basically vegetable oil. The batteries themselves do not contain any liquids. They're solid state batteries. They're not, you might be familiar with hydrogen sulfide batteries, the old batteries. It's not those. They are all solid state modules. And then as David mentioned, the system, this current design of the facility has a retention pond in it. So all waters from normal operations during normal days and even on emergencies would flow into that retention pond. So in an event of a fire, that would be a good location to test the water prior to discharging it off-site.
Thank you. And one kind of big question, going back to the very beginning of your presentation, I didn't see geothermal listed as a part of the portfolio in the renewables, and I was wondering if that's because it's usually just for heating and cooling, or we just don't see it being that big of a factor.
Yeah, I used Energy Information Administration EIA data there, and I don't, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, you don't see much utility scale geothermal right now, and that's mostly utility scale stuff that's going to be on there as stuff that's going to be powering the power on the wholesale market.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. Melissa, did you have a question? I saw you had your hand raised before.
Yeah, my question was, so I understand this is not, you're not generating power, you're storing power. So is it a structured power purchase agreement in some way with ATC for the transfer of the stored energy in the batteries? Explain how that works. 'Cause it
Again, I'm
wouldn't
not
be like a
the
typical-
modeler or the economics person, but I will tell you what I know, and what I know is this, that a typical contract, it would be a capacity payment.
Okay,
So in other words, Wisconsin Power would pay Tenaska for 200 megawatts availability for 4 hours, right, by way of a capacity payment. And that means, simply put, that battery has to be available when dispatched.
Right, so it's like an
Wisconsin
on-demand
Power will
generation.
arbitrage
Okay.
the power, as far as what the
Mhm.
costs are.
Okay.
We would just supply the power as needed via capacity payment. So it's not a purchase power agreement, it's more of a capacity play.
Mhm.
Which is very similar, right, Mark, to the way a Pica plant works now.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Right, a Pica plant, a traditional gas-fired or oil-fired jet engine peaker plant sits around a long time. And when it's called, it better be ready because that's when they really need it and that's when power is the highest. Battery storage is a supplement or replacement for traditional fossil-fired, gas-fired, even oil-fired peaker plants that take 20 to 30 minutes to ramp up. And by the time that happens, the demand might fall. So that's the advantage of a battery storage system.
So, I was kind of daydreaming a few minutes ago, and I apologize for that, but I'm wondering, what's the life of the batteries?
Sure. So again, because this is newer technology, but the manufacturers are telling us that they'll be between 25 and 30 years. And like other batteries, when you see the layout, there are places called augmentation. So when a battery gets older, you don't just take it out and remove it.
Right.
It was less, you just throw another battery online. And so that's the intent of how a facility is laid out. And I might mention, just to follow up on that, there will be a requirement for decommissioning,
Mhm.
right? So in 20 years or 30 years or whenever, when that project's life is over, there is a financial commitment that will stay in place from day one all the way to day end that would provide financial assurance to the city of Green Bay in the event that Tenaska or CIP, which is Copenhagen Investment Partners, who would be the owners of the site, if they walked away, City of Green Bay would implement or institute that bond or financial mechanism to cover the complete cost to restore everything back to its original property, which in this case would be back to the field with nothing there, I guess. And that's a requirement that's throughout industry would be required, and that decommissioning plan is done by an independent engineer who would look at the market every 5 years, and then that plan would have to be subsequently updated, as would the financial assurance that goes with it.
So Tenaska's the developer, and then it's sold to Copenhagen? So.
Yeah, the way the structure of the project is, so Turn Energy LLC is owned by Copenhagen Investment Partners.
Okay.
They are if not the largest, one of the 5 largest investment firms in Europe, and their commitment to renewable energy is fierce. They are moving forward both in Europe and the United States. Tenaska has worked collectively with Copenhagen for the last 5 years on this portfolio. I should have mentioned this at the beginning, the project in Green Bay, there were 2 other projects in Wisconsin. One we've successfully permitted, which is in the city of Two Rivers, and that would be on a industrial parcel owned by the city of Two Rivers. And that had been permitted last March. We have a conditional use permit. You guys are welcome to go online and go to the City of Two Rivers and look at it. It's a very detailed conditional use with 21 conditions.
Is it also of similar size to this project that you're proposing in Green Bay?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Is it of similar size for storage capacity?
Yeah.
It's a little smaller, it's 150 versus 200.
Okay.
Right, yes, and then the third project is in the county of Kenosha, in the township of Wheatland. That is on a more of an agricultural parcel. It's adjacent to a substation that was built in response to a brand-new solar and battery storage in the town of Paris. That is 200 megawatts for 4 hours. We have not started the permitting process on that yet. And across the Midwest, I think we have either 10 or 12 projects, Michigan, Minnesota, Kentucky, Wisconsin, of course. So that portfolio will all be owned by Copenhagen Investment Partners.
The project in Two Rivers, are you working with Two Rivers Water and Light, or are you working with Wisconsin Public Service at the substation?
So the substation, again, is owned by ATC.
Okay, so it's not,
Yeah.
it's not the local.
Oh, no, it's not the local, correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Any questions in person? Go ahead.
Hi, Mark. This is Joey.
Hey, Joey.
Sorry, I may have missed this. I was a little tardy. But this is in anticipation of growing renewables. If we do not grow our renewable, which hopefully we do, we have more solar in the city, is this still valuable to our grid at our current level?
David, why don't you?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And that is because the way that batteries operate in real time is they are constantly pulsing and recharging as over the course of a day. And so they're going to drive down the natural peaks in demand. And so whether you have those batteries backing up solar and wind or geothermal that's backfed onto the grid, you'll have it pull off of baseload plants and make them basically more efficient by driving down those peaks that make them run a little bit harder and less efficient.
Yep.
So if I understand correctly, there's not necessarily a generation source associated with this project, it's just the battery storage itself.
This is what's known as standalone battery energy storage. So it's basically, the way to think about it is you find a place on the grid that Mark was referring to that's got a little soft spot, it's got a little additional power can be fed onto the grid there, and you put a project there to strengthen up that spot to ensure that, the grid doesn't get overloaded.
Great. Any other questions? Otherwise, I do have a few.
Mine were answered, thank you, Melissa, for asking. I was trying to understand the economics and what's in it for, who's making money here and what's behind it, but I did a little back of the envelope calculations. I can see how the capacity payments pencil out. I guess I am wondering, do you get paid for frequency regulation too, if you're a battery on the grid?
You sound like you know a lot more about the economics of electricity than I do. But yes, the ability to use that battery for other purposes is available. But as David said, if you do like frequency response or things like that, and you get in the way of that normal cycle, and at the end of the day when the power is really needed and it's not available, you've probably just ruined your whole business model. So frequency response and things are available, and I cannot attest to how this battery will be dispatched, but the prime function of this battery is a capacity standby payment that is then kicked on at 4:30 p.m. It's 102 degrees in the middle of the summer, and they need power for 3 hours. That battery better be ready.
So basically, for the folks in the room, Melissa knows this too from working with the utilities, it kind of might offset like a peaker plant, like a diesel engine firing up. You can think of it that way.
Right, and if you think of it from a sustainability standpoint, peakers are pretty inefficient engines. They're run by natural gas, even though, right, so now you have carbon emissions, and it takes a while. I worked in the industry that we did fossil, and a brand new state-of-the-art, quote-unquote, state-of-the-art GE peaker, big jet engine, by the way, that's all it is. Turns the turbine. 20 to 30 minutes is not uncommon to start the peaker. So you've lost 30 minutes, and now you're introducing emissions to the environment as you generate electricity.
So some of the key benefits here then would be more efficient electrical generation during peak demand, which would then thereby reduce emissions in that capacity, but then also avoiding the need for a less efficient system to be added to the grid.
Correct. Yes.
Absolutely. And just even having that more reliable power is something that more and more businesses like advanced manufacturers are looking for when they locate into a community. So having an asset like this that you can point to can become an economic development tool.
Great. So just to understand the motivation for you all and the investment companies is that they're expecting a return on their investment. There's not another like funder driving this for a sustainability purpose. It's an investment.
Yes.
Great. Any other questions from the group? Do you have a question? Do we need to have a motion to open the floor to the public? Okay.
Yeah, so
Do we have that motion? Mark, thank you. Do we
I'll
have a second? Great. All in favor?
I,
Aye. We open the floor to the public and call in
Thank you.
Sister Sally Ann.
Yes. So Sister Sally Ann from 3110 Nicolay Drive in Green Bay.
One moment, Sister Sally Ann. Can you hear her okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, sorry.
Okay, this has to do, you talked about the lifespan of the battery and thinking of, the circular economy. What happens with the disposal of the batteries?
David?
Yeah, this is one that I'm personally really excited about because most of the stuff that goes into lithium-ion batteries is a metal, and metals are eminently recyclable. And so there is already a growing battery recycling sector in the United States. So by the time that these cells are ready to go back to the manufacturer or directly to a recycler, they'll in all likelihood go out and get repowered and be put right back into cells to help. The other thing that is being discussed, which is equally exciting, is when you have a project that's attached to the electric grid, it needs to be on point, right? It needs to get charged up to its maximum capacity to go out. Well, let's say it degrades to 65%. 65% for something that's attached to the grid may not work, but it may work to back up a school or a hospital or something else. So there could be a growing market to take batteries out of utility projects and redeploy them to allow other entities to get the advantage of battery storage. So that's a great question and something that I'm excited about.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions?
No.
I don't think we have any more members of the public on the Zoom call, do we? All right,
Motion to close the floor.
motion to close the floor.
second.
You move,
Who was
Alder
the-
Presley moved, Mark seconded. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the commission before we move on from this topic?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
May I
you.
just say that Mark and I will be in Green Bay on November 4th. We'll be staying overnight. We'll be in Green Bay on the 5th. I know it's election day, but if people have questions or want to meet with us in person, as we have to be down in Kenosha on the 6th, so we'll be around is what I'm saying. I live up in Land O'Lakes, so I'm sort of the local guy. Spent a lot of time in Green Bay. Mark and I have been there about 10 times so far. And, Mark was trying to talk me into going to the Packers game on the 3rd, but I can't take another day away from home, otherwise my wife will leave me. So we'll be there is what I'm saying. If you want to meet with us, you have any other questions, Alder Presley has been great and responsive, and we want to make sure that you all have all the information you need.
Great, thank you. To that end, just since you're gonna be in town, I'm curious, is there any appetite on your end, or is it even possible to do something like putting solar above the batteries if you had a partner to do something like that? And if so, would you or have you approached any of the businesses in that area?
The problem, good question. The problem with that is, as you probably have seen, solar needs a vast amount of space compared to batteries. So, for example, a 1 megawatt solar farm takes roughly 5 to 10 acres of land. So even though this is 9 acres, to cover over those panels and things, it just would not make economic sense in the sense that it's just too small of a footprint at that location. Yeah.
Great, thank you for, I mean, not great, but thank you for addressing that. Excellent, all right, then if there's no further discussion, thank you for the presentation, and we will move on to the next item in our agenda.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know.
All right, commission folks, we're at 6 o'clock,
And I
and
know we lost Julia, she had to
Oh.
leave at 6, and so did Daniela, because they're at that,
the event,
that,
yeah.
that other event, so.
We still have a quorum, okay. So if you are open to it, I think we would entertain a motion to table the next item on our agenda, which is a discussion of a sustainability initiative around the NFL draft. I think that could be a robust discussion, we want to give it adequate time. Would anyone like to so move that?
To table the
To
discussion.
table the discussion
To the
of
November meeting.
item F1 on the agenda until the November meeting.
I'll make a
Technically be
motion to hold it
to
over until November.
That motion, would anyone like to make that motion?
Did Ned just make that motion?
I just made a motion to hold it over until November.
Excellent, thank you, Ned, sorry, I didn't hear it.
I will second that.
Excellent, thank you, Alder Presley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent, then thank you all, it is held over until November. Next up, group report. Jenny, do you want to speak to that?
Oh, sure. I guess it's a similar update to what Krista gave last time. We are planning to hold a large energy user roundtable, inaugural initial meeting on Friday, October 25th. And we have Wisconsin Public Service, Focus on Energy,
New North.
New North, Oneida representatives. That will be at that, and the idea is to gather these folks together to discuss the clean energy plan and that overall chunk of carbon that is currently emitted by large commercial and industrial users. So just a group to convene and strategize on how we can reduce that.
Yep, reduce and measure.
And
Right, that's
absolutely.
the other piece is to really, right now, we don't have good line of sight into that very large bucket of emissions that is just commercial and industrial. And so we are looking for opportunities to both achieve reductions and measure those reductions and kind of understand at a more granular level where some of those emissions are coming from. Any comments or questions about that?
I'm planning on attending.
Excellent,
Excellent.
good deal. And if anyone else really wants to be there, let us know. I think we could pass the invitation along. We can have one more commission member.
I think so, yeah, it's not like an
Without
open-
being a
yeah.
quorum, yeah,
Mhm.
it's not an open. But if you're really interested in that topic, let us know. And we'll
Yes.
make sure there's not a quorum and extend the invitation if we can.
Kick you out of the room, I guess.
Yeah.
What she's saying.
I'll
can
leave
technically
if I
have
need
a-
to leave, yeah.
You can technically have a quorum outside, right? You just have to post it.
But
right?
you have
Go
to
through all
post it
that
ahead,
rigmarole.
yeah, right. So we don't want a surprise quorum for sure. All right, any other questions or discussion? Do I have to make a motion every time I move agenda items?
That you move an agenda item?
Every time we go to the next agenda item, or can we just move through the agenda?
No, you just move to the next item.
Great, all right, then on to the next item, which is the youth engagement work group. I'll take a moment to just note here that we are working, Melissa and I are working to kind of formalize the work group updates so they can be included in the notes to city council. So if you lead a work group, please provide your updates to be included in the agenda so that can be passed on. And with that, I will say, the youth engagement work group was only recently approved, as we all know. We reached out to the Green Bay Public School student and staff member, including the staff member on the work group, which is Ned, to let them know that the work group was approved, and to ask that they formalize their half of the Youth Advisory Council. I would say name TBD. That council's not yet been formalized, but we asked that they get that group together, and we'd like to have an initial meeting still in 2024, but kind of contingent on them. Ned, anything you want to add?
Not at this moment.
Great, okay, thank you. Then we are moving on to an item from Melissa, an American Public Works Association video highlighting sustainability and resiliency initiatives from the Department of Public Works.
Yeah, so let me share my screen and let me do that, and then I'll play the video for you all.
You want to share screen too, if we're all going to be able to see it.
I think so.
I think you have to move the video to screen one. to
Oh, I
screen
will?
two then.
Okay.
I think so, 'cause it's.
Okay. So I just need to drag it up there then?
Ned, do you see the dog, or do you
Do
see
you
the
see
YouTube
a
video now?
YouTube?
Yes, I saw the cute dog and the YouTube now.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
Go back to the dog.
You want to see a student?
I'm just trying to make my screen a teeny bit bigger. And I'm hoping there won't be too many commercials, but we'll see.
Oh, we can hear.
Where's the sound?
Pause it for a sec. Let's see where the sound is going.
Go to the bottom right corner of your screen.
Of my screen here, or?
Yes. Yeah, which would be the bottom right. You should have a pop-up somewhere in there.
No, not on.
You have to share your sound.
Usually you don't.
I have no idea.
See where you have the date in the lower right corner of your screen there, where the date and time is.
Yeah.
Double click in that area.
Probably has to be on your screen one.
I think, yeah, I
Oh,
don't.
that could be, yeah.
Just gonna try this again.
You should have a speaker.
I think you're sharing from this speaker, the room speaker, and not your computer speaker.
You're right.
So you'd have to change your sound input on your meeting, which you can do.
Yeah, I just need to get back into my Zoom. Do I have to stop sharing? No.
You don't have to.
Oh,
You
there it is,
can go
there
to
it is.
audio, to the drop down, and select a.
Now, let's see.
That was input of audio, right?
There's two different things here, so,
Oh,
Let's try that and see what happens.
So we handle everything from
Got it. We
picking
just
up your
pull it back
garbage
to the
to
screen.
making sure that the sewers work. The city of Green Bay is located in northeast Wisconsin. We're on the south end of the Bay of Green Bay, which projects off the west side of Lake Michigan.
But one of the biggest challenges the city faces is flooding. Due to climate change, we have a lot more intense precipitation events happening and more frequently. So everything that we can be doing to plan for the next flooding impact needs to be happening.
Green infrastructure is important because they are sustainable. And although higher cost initially, they have the potential to be lower cost in the long term.
They're gonna help water quality, reduce localized flooding, reduced heat island effect, and it's making Green Bay a more pleasant place to live. The flooding that happened in 2019, it inundated over 165 acres of land. There were many houses that had to be evacuated. It was a huge wake-up call. Throughout the whole course of 2023, the Department of Public Works collaborated with several other city departments, and we developed a citywide green stormwater infrastructure plan.
Green stormwater infrastructure helps to protect the environment primarily by time management. What it does is it helps delay that water from getting into our traditional gray infrastructure, allowing that first flush of water that's hitting streets or impervious areas to be processed and moved out of the system before the green stormwater infrastructure releases its water to the system. In addition to that, it also provides some treatment for the primary pollutants that we're worried about. Bay Beach was undergoing an expansion and we needed to provide additional parking up there. So we created a pervious pavement parking lot. So the water is sheeted off of the drive lanes into the parking stalls themselves, and it then infiltrates through the asphalt and the gravel underneath to soak in rather than run off. Webster Avenue is one of our primary streets here, it needed to be reconstructed, and we decided to go with the boulevard cross sections. What we did is we made it inverted, and we directed the stormwater from the road into the middle. We then provided a special soil to allow the water to infiltrate, and we consulted with wildlife biologists to select the plant material to provide the filtration and the phosphorus uptake. Water is probably the most important asset that we have. Sitting on the Bay of Green Bay, we are obviously part of the Great Lakes system, which is the largest freshwater repository on the face of the planet. As the development has occurred, more and more natural habitat has been destroyed. So being able to restore that habitat, bring some of those aquatic and terrestrial species back into the ecosystem and get them flourishing here.
There's a number of different projects that we are working on with the City of Green Bay. One project that we've worked on with them is coastal restoration at the Ken Ewers Park. That had a diked system that was failing, and working with partners, we were able to get that dike system fixed, and now it actually supports coastal wetlands within those areas and keeps them very protected. Another project that we've been working on with them is called the Tank Farm Marsh Project. And what's really nice about that project is it really is not just looking at the intrinsic value of restoring coastal wetlands for fish and wildlife. It's also thinking about how does this wetland continue to support stormwater capacity and services for the city and protect infrastructure.
The East River is about 40-mile long river that flows from south to north. This watershed historically has been heavily impacted by land use practices, flooding, has water quality issues, and also has lost a lot of habitat and wetlands. We can't just fix one thing and say, well, that's good enough. If we fix one thing, that's just pushing the water down to someone else's problem in a lot of cases. The East River Collaborative is a group of stakeholders, people who are working or interested in protecting and improving flood resilience within the East River. Our goal was to bring all the municipalities, all of these stakeholders and agencies together to talk about the problem and what some of the solutions are to the flooding and water quality within the East River, and building what we call a framework for resilience within the East River watershed. Now our collaborative has over 200 members who receive newsletters and information. We do field tours that bring people out to sites where restoration work is occurring. We bring everyone together for a winter forum, and we really want to foster this collaborative environment and people sharing their knowledge and expertise with one another.
The advantages that local government have over other types of government, say state or federal, is we actually have boots on the ground in the community. We know exactly what the impacts are. We know our collection systems better than anybody, and we have probably a better feel for how those impacts are going to be directly felt by our population.
Water moves in a system. It takes this broader approach to look at why this flooding is occurring that really go beyond jurisdictional boundaries. The partners here have been very, very good at looking beyond those jurisdictional boundaries and understanding how to work with other municipalities and identifying who needs to do what and how can we realize these shared outcomes to reduce flooding. I do think that the City of Green Bay is putting together the architecture of a template or model that other communities can absolutely trying to implement parts and pieces of, or maybe all of, within their respective areas.
We definitely hope that what we're doing is being noticed by others, and that other municipalities who may be thinking about implementing GSI type projects see our work and feel comfortable enough to reach out to us to ask us for advice on how they can do the same.
Oh, I vote.
My screen's all red.
Rick, just like you, Big Ed.
Seasonal planning and maintenance isn't just for your home, it's how you stay healthy. At Bellin Health, you know what you need before you need it. Providing preventive
Go back
care
to your
with
browser.
empathy.
For maintaining what really,
There you go.
We're advertising for Bellin.
Yeah, that
Hey, a local.
That was not
business.
intentional.
Yeah.
So that video was produced, the American Public Works Association reached out to, every year they reach out to several municipalities, and they reached out to Green Bay and Director Grenier and, said, what are some things you have going on, maybe that's a little more innovative and, different things. And so the GSI really caught their attention, and that's why they featured Green Bay. And then they also used that as a video at their national conference as well. And yeah, so it was I thought it was done really well. I loved how they pulled a lot of our partners in.
Yeah. I have a question.
Sure.
Maybe a consideration for our draft discussion that is held over.
Oh.
Is there any way that we could get like a 30-second edited version of that to promote?
There is a shorter version.
Okay.
It's not 30 seconds, but it's shorter.
Yeah, I mean.
And you can talk to Steve about it too.
Steve?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like there's a lot of time to kill in the draft. Like would any of the like TV stations run something like that as like an interest story as part of their draft coverage? So I think they need a shorter version.
Sure.
But okay.
Oh, that's a good
Maybe
idea.
we'll put that on our held over agenda item.
Like talk to Chris Roth at
Who's-
WBAY. He does these.
Just a heads up, it looked awesome. I could hear
Some of
about
it?
60. Yeah, so.
Okay. The
just-
link is in your packet, so if you want to watch it, tonight, tomorrow.
May be able to
Yeah, I'm just for anyone who may watch this on recording, it's called Green Solutions for Green Bay Public Works. So I think it's pretty, you could just, Google that and YouTube it. But, yeah, it looked really cool.
Some things.
Yeah, no,
Visual.
Especially your part, Melissa.
Yeah, I was not happy to do that on a Monday morning when I almost forgot about it.
Didn't they have professional hair and makeup?
No.
What?
No.
Who shoots a video?
I looked like 10 years older in that video, I swear. I saw it and I was like, no.
Didn't look great. Let it be made in part of the public record, official comments, Melissa looked great.
No, I had almost forgotten about it.
That's rough.
No,
But
it's-
yeah, I think he looked.
Yeah, Steve Grenier did a great job too. I mean, he really spoke well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
He
I'm
always
not-
sounds like he's reading off like something
He does.
written in front of his eyes.
Steve,
on his
Steve,
eyelid.
I've known Steve a long, long time. He's got that kind of mind where he can kind of grab stuff.
Yeah.
And
He's did
he's
well.
done it a lot. So, and like I said, I was just suggesting to Krista that Chris Roth at WBAY does these 3 or 4 or 5 minute pieces once a week or every other day or so. And he's always looking for topics, and
Mhm.
and I think he's really he does his research before he does it too. So
Sure.
he's really well spoken on some of these topics.
Have we talked to him? Is that the guy? Someone else locally does like a sustainability.
That's Ryan Kudish.
Yes.
He's from
There's a lot of interest.
WFRD, and actually he'd be really interested too because
Yeah.
I just talked to him last week. He was.
Do we have microphones in the room that connect
We
to
switched
Zoom?
to your computer.
Oh my gosh,
Oh.
Ned.
Sorry, Ned.
And Ned, I'm always hard to hear. I've heard that many, many times.
He can't hear
Can't
me
hear
now.
you.
That that video and then,
So if you click, the up arrow.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
now you can hear us.
Can you hear us now, Ned?
Yep. Thank
Sorry.
you.
Sorry, we had to switch back to the room microphone. Thank you for the reminder.
Sure. Thank you.
So yeah, Ryan Kudish at WFRD. He's one of their meteorologists, and he does. He
Mhm.
actually won an award from the Land Conservation Group in Northeast Wisconsin Land Trust just gave him an award for his sustainability series that he did over the last year or so.
Awesome.
And he's looking for more stuff. He just came to our facility last week and did a whole thing. Got a lot of interviewing with one of my colleagues on battery stuff. So
Great.
Yeah, there's definitely options there, I think.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, then on to your resiliency coordinator report.
Right, I'll make it short. So I'm in and I mentioned this during the last meeting, but between now and the end of the year, I have a little over, like about $520,000 of grants that I'm applying for the East River Emily Park Flood Resiliency Project, for that large-scale wetland restoration. I'll be gone most of next week for the Urban Sustainability Directors Network annual conference in Minneapolis. So this is we're just in our second year of being a member. City of Green Bay is a member in USDN, and it's for local governments and that have sustainability staff part of their, so I'm going to that, and it's in Minneapolis, so I don't have to fly, and so it should be great. It should be great. There's several other Wisconsin communities that'll be there as well. Yeah, so a lot of grant stuff right now, and that's about it.
Is there anything you need the support of the commission in?
That's a great question. I don't usually get asked that question.
Well, you can think about it.
Not right now.
I'm
I'm not thinking of anything right this second. So, no, but I'll let you all know.
Great. The next item, or any questions for Melissa? Any discussion on the report? Okay. The next item on our agenda is announcing our next commission meeting. Question to the group, do we have the flexibility to ask if any other commission members have anything that they want to announce or comment on before we move to that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll make one note and I can send out information if anyone's interested. I represent Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council in my day job. We are having our statewide annual conference on November 13th. If anyone is interested, I can give you a discount code for a general public attendance. So,
where is it being held this year?
In Milwaukee at the Harley Garage Museum.
Nice.
So, it'd be great to see anyone there. Otherwise, I'm happy to report back anything interesting. I oversee our Green Masters program. We'll be recognizing Green Masters and participants in the program at the event. And I was putting together the final list today, and there's actually like a lot of companies in the Fox Valley that are being recognized. So I can, again, share that if anyone's interested. Go ahead, Ned.
Thank you. Just remembered to mention that the Green Bay Public Schools is having a referendum that will be on the November ballot. The information about what's on the referendum is online. The district is doing a lot of energy efficiency and renewable energy projects right now, and that's part of, the operations for raising money for more operations like that. So if you're interested in learning more about that possible major project in Green Bay, the gbaps.referendumfacts.org is where you can go to learn about it and make up your mind as to how you will be voting.
Hey, Ned, do you know anything about the University of Illinois' work with Green Bay Public Schools on sustainability? Because they reached out to me to ask me about some sustainability issues, and I'm talking to them. Oh, I don't know. Within the next
I haven't been contacted by the University of Illinois. I don't believe.
They're working. They're
but I'd be glad to talk to them.
Yeah,
we have a clean energy commission.
Yeah. So they said they were working on behalf of, or in conjunction with the Green Bay Area Public School District, so on sustainability issues. But I will let you know more
Exciting.
once I hear more. I don't know if it's a research project or if what they're doing exactly.
Cool. Yeah, please do. Feel free to share that with me or share my information with them.
Okay.
And since we're telling Ned things, Ned, I'll also tell you, and for the group too. I met a graduate student through the UW Sustainable Management Program last week whose graduate research is about how the financial benefits and business case for carbon neutral schools. I'm hoping to have him present at a commission meeting potentially at some point, but Ned, also if you're interested in talking to him more quickly, if you have a reason, related to your energy, Green Bay Area Public School Energy Committee work, to be in touch with him, I'd be happy to share his contact information.
I'd like to be connected with that
Oh,
too. I got a
awesome.
project going on with Net Zero Pathways for Schools.
Okay, good, yes. He'll be glad to hear that. I'm gonna make myself note or I'll forget. Anything else before we say the next commission meeting? Ned, you're off mute, you got anything? No?
Oh, no, sounds good. Connect me with anyone you
All right.
want. That sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Then the last item on our agenda is that our next Sustainability Commission meeting is November 20th at 5 o'clock. Please come prepared with some brainstormed ideas about how we can leverage sustainability for the 2025 NFL draft. It's something the mayor has expressed interest in, and we may even be able to approach the Packers about doing something formally. So let's get some good ideas going at the next meeting. And with that, if anyone would like to move to adjourn our meeting, I think we're at that point in the agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Alder Presley. Any seconds?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you for your extended participation. We'll see you on November 20th. So adjourned.
Bye, Ned.
Bye, Ned, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
So on November 20th, I will be in Minneapolis for a conference, but
So that means if I need to get something to my daughter, I can ask you to move.
There you go.
My sister's in Minneapolis. Can we all just hand in gifts?
Meeting will be held in Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, I leave on Sunday.
I just talked to her last night. She's coming home for Thanksgiving. It's $30 for bus ticket from Minneapolis to Green Bay, which is like.
What?
Oh,
it's pretty
$30.
economical.
Recording stopped.
It's what? It's $30
Yeah,
from,
from Minneapolis to Green
Thank
Bay.
you so much for being
why am
here.
I driving?
I don't know.
Well, how long would it take to
Yeah,
take
how long
the
is it
bus?
gonna take? Is it a
It takes
Greyhound?
longer.
No, it's actually it's Wisconsin Coach Lines. It's about 6 hours as
That's
opposed to
not-
4
Oh,
hours.
that's actually
Is
not
it kind of
much
like a
longer.
Badger bus, except it goes?
Just like going with
Yeah,
kids.
it's much better than Greyhound.
Probably
It's
get
much better than
Wi-Fi.
Greyhound bus.
Yeah.
She's
That's to
taking,
pay
Does it
attention
leave
to
at the
road.
downtown station?
yes. It drops off, the intermodal here and goes
Yep.
downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul, either one, and both of them. Minneapolis is downtown. It doesn't actually have a bus station. It's a really weird drop-off spot.
Will it take me right to my hotel? I'm just joking. I know. it won't.
No. But, I actually looked,
Whack.
$30. I looked at it last time I
didn't
went
know what
to
I
see
was
her.
talking
because
about.
I
Like, I didn't really know what she was
created by
asking.
myself.
And I knew that was on the
Yeah.
agenda, but I wasn't
Yeah.
exactly sure what it was, and we hadn't talked about it yet. So
A
she's like,
desk?
so what are you thinking about?
Did you take it on the bus?
No, I think I drove.
I was just talking about
Like,
well,
you should
Green Bay's
find
doing
extra
great things for
seats.
sustainability. We
That's
want to
great.
show
Yeah.
that off, and we
But,
want to
yeah,
incorporate that.
it's
So I don't know.
cheap. If
Hopefully
you
they
go-
make me look less stupid because I was just like
Bus
trailing
rides,
off
it's
and like
cheap. It's
not
$30.
remembering people's
Wow.
names or
Once a day,
titles and
each
just like
way.
I was like, we
You know,
have
basically
Alex
Minneapolis to
Galt.
Milwaukee,
Now
and
he's a
Yeah, so if you have flexibility in
he's
your
a
schedule,
he's a
that's
like
pretty cool.
It's usually 9 in the morning.
It's just like, That's confusing. How did you talk
I
to them?
know.
So
I
what,
just,
leaves at 9 and,
I gave a
9
written
coming
statement.
from Minneapolis,
Oh,
I think it's 1
They'll
o'clock.
be disappointed to hear that we
The
didn't.
bus,
Yeah, I
they
texted
do
her.
like Minneapolis to
I'm sorry, you didn't get
Milwaukee
that
or
good.
Chicago,
No,
and then they
but
go back.
It was.
Or they have 2 buses going like
Okay.
this.
And we were still
So,
talking, it was like, we're not
it's
gonna
pretty
have a real
convenient,
conversation
truthfully.
tonight, and
My
I
daughter
wanna give
loves it.
where did you get
that
the
space,
schedule?
so,
It's online.
um,
If you just search, if you just
Yeah,
Google bus,
I
I think it's Megabus,
the
might be the
mayor
Mega?
carrier.
Okay.
wants to talk
And then
about it.
Yeah,
Wisconsin
I mean,
Coach
I
Lines
have a
buses.
car
Mission,
reserved to
what we
go
would-
to drive myself,
really
but
interested in
I
pursuing
mean, I've done that.
Yeah.
So I was like,
For me, it's.
yeah.
I just don't
Yes,
like
let's
driving
do it.
5 hours straight. I feel really buggy and
Yeah.
not very, I'm not very,
Yeah, I wanna-
like,
I'm
excited
glad that we held it,
for
I think, because
anything
I've
when
not been
I
able to like.
finish
I
that
mean,
drive.
Think about it,
It's
yeah.
I'm
exhausting,
thinking
yeah.
in
I have
terms
a
of outreach
coworker
rather
with
than
both
in
Yeah.
terms of
women
actual,
go
like, how can we structure
together.
sustainability
Yeah, it's
into
different when
this?
you have a passenger, right?
Yeah, outreach.
I would totally bring my
Okay.
dog
I
if
sent
A, I
in,
could
sustainable
put one of my
events
dogs in a
checklist
city
to
vehicle
use in, like,
and
Friday
be
for
like
Jason.
the hotel
But
accepted
then he
animals,
just
and I don't think they
requested that.
do.
He was
A
really
dog
into
like
it. He's
cats.
like, what can we do to
Give you a
like,
place to stay that has 2
they're planning
cats.
some-
No,
Dog
I
is
don't
another
think
one.
they do. It actually would never really
how
spend
can we
time
make that more
with cats.
sustainable? And I was like, throwing a few ideas.
I'm gonna
and I
get
was like,
together,
I'll
my
send you a
niece
checklist.
started at University
Because
of
they
UM.
exist, they're out there, I'm gonna make it up.
So she's
you
a
know?
freshman, so we're gonna get together on Sunday afternoon.
Sure.
For,
Um,
she's gonna show me around, show me
Cool.
everything.
Yeah, I went over for
I'm gonna do it
the
now, otherwise I'll
Minneapolis
forget,
State.
I'm
Oh.
sorry.
I did it at State Fair. So I
Okay.
went
It's
over
very
on Thursday and
state
stayed
fair.
on Sunday. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Joey,
And then,
Did you get that email? I
Yell at your
Talk
kid or
on
your
Wednesday.
cat? Oh,
Maybe
okay.
both.
Yeah, so what'd you say?
Wednesday, is there anything else you need from me between now and Wednesday when we're meeting?
What we need
To
on
talk about.
Wednesday. No, if I think of anything, I'll.
Yeah,
Well,
email or text
actually,
me.
I'm sorry, I did think of something. We're